Speeches, they're great. They're used to motivate the disheartened, persuade the ignorant, and even to solidify regimes. Time and time again, the leaders of our world present new and innovative speeches that will eventually go down in history, in books, essays, and even in the minds of scholars. However, I do have one question. How do they do it? And can I do it too? Now, of course, we all know the iconic speeches in history, such as Abe Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream, and Winston Churchill's We Shall Fight on the Beaches. But what has always piqued my interest more has been the quote-unquote evil people in history. It's a known fact that these evil leaders have had extremely long terms in office, and as much as that's due to the whole no political competition or also murder you aspect, well, they were also known to be charismatic, having good leadership skills, and present some pretty good speeches. So that's what we're going to be looking into today. Change the title card. Here we go. Now, if I were to analyze the speeches of the bad people in history, I'd also have to look at the good. We know that the good leaders in history were successful to some extent, and they've been remembered for their oratory skills, so I decided to turn to them first. Before long, I was able to pick out a few speeches that I wanted to analyze. I was looking for diversity not only in the topics which the figures were talking about, but also diversity in the origins of the speakers. In the end, I settled on Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream, John F. Kennedy's Ich bin ein Berliner, Charles de Gaulle's Vive le Quebec Libre, Emmeline Pankhurst's Freedom or Death, and Winston Churchill's We Shall Fight on the Beaches. It took me a while, but after long periods of sitting in front of my screen, I was finally able to garner a few key points that I noticed in some of these speeches. Not only did I try looking for literary devices, but I also tried looking for structure and body language where possible. With some of those points in mind, I moved on to look at the speeches from the bad leaders in history. However, I did get a little bit clouded sorting these leaders into categories of good and bad. In the case of some leaders such as Nikita Khrushchev, well, he was great for his nation, but he was an enemy to others. So I turned to my history teacher for some guidance on the situation, and she came back with an excellent response. As a politician, you have to make difficult decisions which will benefit the country's safety, economy, people, growth, etc. And it is not an easy job. You can't please everyone. That's why there are no good men when it comes to powerful politicians. And with that in mind, I decided to analyze the persuasive techniques in the speeches of the evil next, in replacement of just looking at the good and finding their techniques in the speeches of the bad. Before long, I was back to doing research and picked out a few speeches to have a look at. These pieces ended up being Adolf Hitler's Reichstag address on the 28th of April and 6th of October, 1939, Adolf Hitler's Stalingrad speech, Joseph Goebbels' Sportpalast speech, Joseph Stalin's election speech, Nikita Khrushchev's On the Cult of Personality and Its Consequences, a document regarding Bashar al-Assad's political speeches, and a Business Insider article titled Why Hitler Was Such a Successful Orator. After even more time in front of my screen, I finally found a few tips and tricks that were frequently used by the presenters, and I have a conclusion. There's no grand difference. There was no grand difference between the techniques used by the good and the bad leaders, except that the bad leaders used slightly more statistics in the examples that I looked at. But apart from that, pretty much everything was the same. Nevertheless, as mentioned earlier, these categorizations are, well, opinion. They're subjective. No one could really say whether a leader is bad or not because, well, at the time, they were shining beams of hope to the everyday citizen. This of course meant that I was back on track to my original question, so it's time to change that title card for one last time. The following points were not in every single speech, but were common traits shared by a few of them. If you're looking for specifics, such as quotes and themes, check the description below and there will be a link to my research document which has all the links and citations I used for my research. Moving on, here are the few points that I have identified. In terms of content, set the morals of the party. I have to state what I'm all about so that people aren't confused regarding my motives. Compliments, motivation, inspiration. I need to compliment my target audience as well as motivate and or inspire them. Usually remarks about their bravery or persistence will do the trick. It will help to raise my image. Authoritative. I also need to speak and act authoritatively. I have to tell people what to do, how to do it, and what goals can be achieved from carrying out said actions. This will give me a more prestigious air. Inclusivity. I've got to let the people know that they are a part of my movement, that they are a pivotal force in us achieving our goal. This technique helps to drive more people into action. They need to understand that they are needed. Repetition. Repetition is always a great thing to have. It makes my statements more reinforced, bolder, and memorable. The grand scheme of things. I also have to mention the grand scheme of things. This movement isn't just for temporary change. It's for the greater good of all mankind and its future. Doing this assists in putting things into perspective. Quotes, and quoting the opposition. Quotes are always a good thing to have. They show that you are well-read and well-informed, making you a more reliable candidate of trust. Metaphors. Metaphors help not only to convey an image, but also to get the cognitive abilities of your audience going. However, make sure to only use good metaphor, as some people in your audience might read too deep into it. Jokes. Jokes help to lighten tense moods, and though they're not always necessary, they help to create a more approachable character to the speaker. Moving on to structure. Starts with a time frame. The speech should begin with a time frame of some sort. By saying how long a certain event has been happening or how long it's been since a certain event has occurred, a timeline can be subliminally inserted into the minds of listeners, which could help in progress tracking. Breaking down speech. Breaking down speech is also useful in keeping the attention of your viewers. It helps them not to get lost in your speech as well as retain concise points. Inspirational ending. Finally, I need an inspirational ending. One that will be headlined in the newspapers and go down in history. In most works, a conclusion is necessary, and so applies to speeches. In addition, body language. Unique speaking style. A unique speaking style can help to make your voice memorable as well as persuasive. One of Hitler's biggest gambits was his mesmerizing voice. Hand gestures. Hand gestures could be used to emphasize on certain points. Many leaders would expose their palms, giving a more open expression to them. Podium shenanigans. As the speakers stood in front of the podiums, it was almost inevitable that they would interact with them. I classify these actions as podium shenanigans. For example, JFK would hit the podium with his fist when making an intense statement. Wearing a suit. Finally, they were all wearing suits or some type of formal clothes. Of course, this is because speeches are formal events, but proper attire does help in creating an esteemed air. With all of that out of the way, I could finally start writing my speech. But first, I needed to choose a suitable topic. I want to choose something that wasn't exactly orthodox, a point of view that wasn't exactly popular but also not immensely supported or completely disregarded. Then I would have to implement all of the aforementioned techniques into my speech to try and persuade you, the listener, to support my point of view. This topic ended up being supporting the voluntary human extinction movement. Since the beginning of this project, the same memory of me stumbling upon what seemed to be a completely satirical website ran through my mind. The voluntary human extinction movement, also known as Vehement, has always piqued my interest, and I figured that this project would be the best excuse for me to actually look through their website. And so, without further ado, I hope you enjoy my speech. For years, perhaps even decades, humanity has been destroying our planet. Every part of our lives, from the gentle warmth of the morning sun to the calm, serene darkness beheld by the night. From the first cry of pain we shriek to the last smile of pride and accomplishment. We enjoy life, but of course at the very cost of the land below us. I stand here today to promote a higher cause, one that may seem dubious upon first inspection, but my friends, I do not kid you when I say that this just might be Earth's salvation from strenuous torture. The Voluntary Human Extinction Movement, VHEMT, pronounced Vehement. Supporters and members of this movement are but that, vehement. We are a movement of thinkers that believe in the humanitarian alternative to preserving nature on Earth. Voluntary extinction of the parasitical species Homo sapien. The basis of this revolutionary movement is simple. Stop reproducing. Simply stop making more of us. Despite the name, Vehement is not centered around extinction, but rather the apprehension of reproduction. By doing this, we will be able to get rid of human life on Earth and restore it to its former glory and natural splendor as a distributor of unfathomable beauty. Unaffected by carbon emissions, desperate scavengers of its raw materials, and having its creations uprooted simply for the sake of space. And to those of you who are thinking, are you insane? Or perhaps, doesn't it seem a little cult-like? Well, Behemoth is not a radical group, nor a suicide cult, nor an organization of insane people. Behemoth is a concept that is supported by no devout followers. We do not believe in coercion or aggressive persuasion. We simply follow a morally correct choice that will reap benefits for Earth in the long run. Nevertheless, my friends, do not get me wrong. I do not believe that we will achieve this goal immediately. It would be preposterous to believe in such a notion. However, with every single one of you who decides to join this movement, we get ever closer to our inevitable goal. Now, I'm sure you all know what good would come out of this. Essentially, right now, humanity is fighting itself. We are competing for materials, jobs, housing, education, and general survival. Chances are, if you are watching my speech, you are one of the victorious, at least in some way or another. However, you competed nonetheless, and some are not as fortunate as you are. Poverty rates are increasing, and people around the world are struggling in more ways than one. If we stand together, we will be able to eventually make the fight easier. For us, for everyone. We have no enemy, except for human greed, which we counter with generosity. We have no enemy except for ignorance, which we counter with awareness. We have no enemy except for oppression, which we counter with freedom. Now, my friends, if I have persuaded you to continue listening on, may I lay out our plan. To achieve our long-range goal, I ask of you to carry out only 2 menial tasks that will eventually accumulate into a tidal movement that will save nations. First, we must spread the concept of our movement. Tell any person of an open ear about us. Explain our will to ensure a better world for the future. Combat any misconceptions if possible. Spread our mission and we will be triumphant. Even to those who already have children, stopping even at 5 is enough, as long as we can stop more people from populating the earth. However, be wary not to be forceful. We are not aggressive heretics, we are educated individuals, as well put on our official website. If an idea lacks enough merits to be passed on without being force-fed, it probably deserves to be forgotten. Secondly, and more importantly, we must work on ourselves. The purpose of our movement is not simply to eradicate humanity, but to benefit the earth. We must redirect our ways of life toward more environmentally friendly means of living. Using public transport, refraining from using excessive electricity, saving our fossil fuels, every little bit makes a change. We must change from an anthropocentric mindset to an egocentric one. Alas, my friends, I must conclude my speech. Remember, our voluntary human extinction movement is not about hating humanity, but rather our love for the myriad of species that inhabit our earth alongside us. Tell those who are willing to hear about us, but do not preach what you do not practice. Together, we will be able to change the world. Together, we will be able to stand with pride in this selfless mission we've undertaken. Together, we shall go voluntarily extinct. My friends, may we live long and die out. Thank you. So, what did you guys think of the speech? Do you think I hit all the points? Do you think I did a good job? Was my research at least accurate? Leave some comments down below and like the video if you think that this was well done. Nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope that it was helpful or educational in some way or another. Thank you.